I've been doing a lot of self-evaluation in the last few years, just seeing other people who I feel like are vibrating higher, and what is it that I'm carrying around that they aren't. And knowing that a lot of it came from my childhood, I'm doing like, what have I put in a box and compartmentalized that I'm not opening because I don't want to deal with it. And one of those things, and let me just also say, I am by no means an expert. I still do that shitty thing where I see someone and I'm like, ugh. And
that's human nature.
It is.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah. But I think the consciousness of knowing like, ooh, I just did a shitty thing by having a shitty reaction to whatever that was, having that cognizance and going like, oh, that wasn't cool. That is a low vibration thing. That is a whatever. And having that awareness and going like, fix that. What should your reaction have been? And then over time, just training yourself. So with the population in general, I try to assume that when I see something that I disagree with or disapprove of, that I don't have the whole story. Just assuming I don't have the whole story goes so far. But, and it's especially difficult, for example, with my husband, Dustin. We've known each other for 11 years. We've been married for more than 5. I like to assume I know why he's doing whatever he's doing, right?
Right. That's how the essence of relationships and marriages, yes.
And then I go, why? But not in an actually curious way, in a rhetorical, like, what in the world are you doing? Where if I can take the time to be like, that was an interesting choice. What made you decide that? And I come into it with actual curiosity. It has such a big effect. I also, my role in my family, I'm the oldest of 3. I'm 35. My little brother just turned 34, and my little sister's 30. So we're all grown. Our mother's disabled, and in some way we all help care for her. So as all of us being adults who've had to be adults for a long time, our roles and our relationship between the 3 of us have all shifted. And currently, I'm personally by nature, I'm a fixer. Up until probably I had kids, I would fix things, but also I was pretty judgmental about it. You're not able to take care of this because you made poor decisions with your money and now you need help, and that's because judge. Yeah. And it had such a negative impact on my relationship, specifically with my siblings. And I'm at a point where it's not, I can acknowledge how unhealthy, how unfair that was. I'm working on patching that up and not being that person anymore. And I can look back on it and am ashamed of how I behaved and how I, even if I didn't overtly say things, I know it was in my head. I'm in there. I know what it was. And obviously I'm not like super sly because they all felt it also.
Yeah.
So it had negative impacts on my relationships that I'm still trying to overcome. However, luckily for my children, whether they triggered it or it was a coincidence, who knows, I feel like I'm in a place now where I can bring my kids up in a space where, like when we were talking about Montessori, it's safe to just be whoever you're going to be. For example, Jimmy, my son, told me the other day he was a girl. He said, I'm a girl. And I said, oh, are you? So then last night I'm trying to get him to repeat the conversation. I said, Jimmy, are you a boy? He says, no. I said, are you a girl? No. So what are you? He says, I'm a cat. Meow, meow. Okay, buddy, if you want to be a cat.
Yeah, today we are a cat.
Today I'm a cat.
Yes.
And I don't want there to ever be a time when my kids, when I say, what are you? What do you want? What do you like? When they're afraid to be honest with me because I'm judgmental. So that has inspired a shift for sure. Just having that experience growing up.
My dad and I were talking about that on the phone the other day because my parents always just pretended like they were perfect. They never did anything bad when they were my age. And, the list goes on of like, oh, we're just the perfect parents that you think we are. And so that made me feel like no matter how many times they said, if you're ever at a party and you need a ride home, call us, I felt like I couldn't call them or I couldn't talk about my personal stuff. And so now he realizes that like they thought they were doing the right thing, but like maybe it wasn't the right thing. And that made me want to raise my kids the opposite way of like, hey, I've made all these mistakes, I've done these things, this is who I am, and there's nothing to hide, you know?
So you've been shown by your experience with your parents that showing a chink in the armor is actually going to create a stronger bond with your kids.
Yeah.
Than trying to put up this front of like, oh, I don't make mistakes and you don't have to either. Let me just save you from it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that that's the most powerful thing that we can do, whether it's obviously children is one aspect to this, but it's like basically telling them and acknowledging like, I'm not perfect, you know, and I think that them being able to see that also helps with the judgment side of things, to where it's like, you know, when I tell my son Jack, like, hey, I'm really sorry for being snippy in the car, you know, or something, or just being transparent with age appropriateness of saying, hey, buddy, I have had a really rough day. You know, this A, B, and C happened at work, and just give him a very, you know, 11-year-old appropriate answers, but so that he knows if I'm a little on edge, it's not him, because I think then if you don't have those conversations with the people that you love or the people that you're closest with, then that also, I mean, that in a sense is a form of judgment, because then he's like, what did I do to trigger that? You know?
Exactly. Give them the gift of letting them know it's not personal, while also vocalizing something that holds you responsible for your own actions, so that your 11-year-old can say, hey, I know this isn't about me, but I also don't appreciate the way that you're talking to me.
Yeah, I think that's really good too.